Hi, everyone. I'm Dustin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bot Copy. We provide a front-end web and mobile app interface for Google Cloud Dialogflow. So we're Google partners, and we get to work with big and small companies every day. One of our favorites is Riot Games. So we brought in Ray today to kind of talk about Riot a little bit, why you chose to kind of dive into the chatbot. I think the most exciting part of your chat journey is, from what I've heard from our conversations, is people were a little bit skeptical about the success of the chatbot in the beginning. So you kind of took a pretty large data approach out of testing, and looks like we're now ready for full production, and it went well. So I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, talk about what role you play at Riot. We'll go from there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm a manager of product at Riot Games. We run a bunch of our infrastructure services, and chatbots, when I joined, were a pretty taboo topic. For context, our team is responsible for all of the internal tooling and the tooling that you see on our support sites, all of the tooling that our agents use to connect with internal Riot client, to access data, view data. And historically, the UX of how our player experience has been pretty traditional for gaming. And if you don't know what Riot Games is, if you've played League of Legends or recently Valorant, we are a esports. We do a lot of live player-to-player gaming, and recently launching a few other games, including Wild Rift, which is on mobile, and on Legends of Runeterra, which is our card game. So one of the big challenges in our company was that historically chatbots have been very difficult. One, we are a ticket-based company, so the user experience for our players is that if you want to resolve an issue, 9 times out of 10 you would either go to an FAQ or you have to submit a ticket. And by the nature of our ticket forms, you have a pretty high deflection rate. Deflection rate for us is the ability to solve a player an issue ahead of time before they actually have to get to an agent to solve that issue. So all of our metrics are driven towards deflection, the ability for us to make sure that they don't need to speak to an agent. But the natural deflection rate is when a player just has a difficult time creating an issue. So maybe they just get worn out through the ticket form, or they have to wait 24 hours because that's how long it takes for that ticket to actually reach an agent. So we're already fighting against an uphill battle where our deflection rates, by the nature of a somewhat of a difficult funnel, are pretty high. So historically, prior to me joining, we had done 2 tests on chatbots with kind of out-of-the-box solutions. But due to the nature of how our language is, right, you're not looking at a traditional vernacular for, I want to speak to a sales rep. You're saying, you might even get leet speak. You're going to get anything from all of the ways that our champions are. We have hundreds of champions and all of the different skins. The way that you build intents, or the way that you have to approach the understanding what the customer is trying to say, becomes a little more challenging because of the nuance of the gaming industry. So historically, chatbots actually ended up creating opposite of deflection, more tickets for our agents than what we would expect, meaning that it was not worthwhile to invest in chatbots because it would just cause more work and more operational costs to solve tickets, now that it was easier to submit a ticket. So back to your question, why are we driven towards a data approach? Well, historically, chatbots were rejected as a solution for our customers because we couldn't bear the operational cost of making it easier for the players and still maintain a roughly high satisfaction rate. Plus, chatbots weren't recognizing the intents and not really giving out really good answers to our players because the chatbot doesn't know what a Garen is, or what a skin is, or why they're asking about skins, or these very nuanced, also usually 100% misspelled versions of what you're going to get in a chatbot from a gamer.
Yeah. And so there were all these problems with potentially taking on a new chatbot. project? What was your approach towards kind of proving the traditional, what you had done in the past with chatbots to what you're currently doing now?
Sure. So we have taken a phased approach. One, we have certain requirements in order to launch globally, which is that we have to support 22 languages.
Mhm.
And we would need to make sure that it's an open-ended system for the service to be localized by our own personal localization staffing or our own
Yeah.
team. Because the nature of how you translate Garen or whatever into another language can't be done by any machine. We actually have an entire in-house staff to help with stuff like that. So we had to take a look at the market for what are some open-ended request response services that we could make highly customizable for what we wanted to do. And we landed on testing out Google Dialogflow CX and Amazon Connect and Amazon Lex due
Mm.
to the nature that we had all of our internal services are on AWS, and we had an existing contract with Google, so we needed something that was already pre-approved by the business and had the
Yeah.
flexibility to grow to 22 languages, incorporating our own localization, customizable for our own intents, and understand kind of what's under the hood.
So you kind of follow with most other enterprises are in the same position where they're with one cloud vendor that also provides a really nice NLU. And you ran a series of tests, both testing AWS using Lex and Dialogflow. What'd you kind of find during those tests? Because I'm sure there's people in the audience that are looking between the two. And if you're already, was it difficult, since you do have a lot of cloud infrastructure already on AWS, to use a Google product at the end of the day?
So it was pretty interesting because at first glance, I think our team really wanted to use AWS because of the nature of the flexibility of it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And so we had almost all of the engineers say AWS is probably the solution we should go with, whereas all the business analysts were saying, no, we want to use Google for the interface.
Mm.
And the tests that we ran, we had to pick a solution that didn't necessarily start off with connecting to our internal services. So because our team connects all of the Riot client data to outside of the client, we
Mm.
have what we call like the keys to the kingdom. If you wanted to
Yeah.
modify, add all of the content you've ever wanted, you do that through our tooling. If you've ever gotten a free skin, or if you've ever gotten beta access, you do that a lot through our tooling. So we had to pick a topic, which we decided for tech tickets that were relatively complicated, still take up 30% of all of our tickets, but could actually test the experience of building a bot. So we decided on roughly like 40 requirements that we needed, both from in tech infrastructure to making sure that we could connect with our local CMS to making sure we could do we could expose it to players. And what we did was we actually built two of the exact same bots using the exact same intents across both of the different platforms for solving tech tickets,
Mm.
and tested it against a 30-30-30 ABC test, I guess, on our website for all of the tech related tickets. And what that means is that we actually integrate Google Analytics across all of our websites. And
Yeah.
you can do a split test where 33% of people were able to see the Google bot, 33% of people were able to see the Amazon bot, and 33% of people saw nothing. And the
Mm.
nothing is actually the biggest factor for us, because we want to make sure that as compared to both bots, you understand your control variable for what the natural rate of tickets that were going to be submitted without those bots. So your control for us acted as, okay, if either Google and Amazon end up submitting less tickets than what our control is, we can invariably say that that's a proxy for deflection, or a proxy for a group of people who would not submit tickets. So we ran that test, and I think one of the most interesting pieces was that while Google and Amazon didn't have too much of a deflection rate,
Yeah.
the piece that came back as some of the most important was the feedback from the business analysts, saying that at least with Google, we understood how the intents were faring, which intents had the highest rate of no match, essentially, and being able to actually go and adjust all of those intents to actually match what the players were asking, because they were
Mm.
asking give me a human, I'm freaking out, my account has been like leaked or whatever. I mean, they
Yeah.
were coming up with words where we were like, we would have never been able to predict that.
Yeah.
Because they
Exactly.
would also just weren't really written in English.
Yeah.
So in the test, because we were able to do two bots almost exactly the same, while I think the actual NLU probably picked up the intents the same, Google was able actually to show what your flow was, or we were able to dive deep into the logs to actually pull out the chats and then identify what we needed to build in for the right intents to meet their needs. And a faster rate of development for that was allowed us to go and pick them as our solution. And so that was the first test that we ran, and we run our products in a stage of roughly like 5 stages. There's discovery, there's prototyping, there's proof of concept, MVP, and then like we get to like soft launch. So we knew that this test was going to be the throwaway test where we just kind of haphazardly built it. But after seeing that, we now have a lot more structure as we go into proof of concepts and MVPs to launch for the rest of our players.
Yeah, interesting. So you think that Google, the way that that was set up, is making training and everything easier for the chatbot in the future?
It's definitely making training easier for the chatbot in the future, but also training for the agents. One of the things that was really difficult about Amazon, which we found surprising, was that your intents had to be done through like Amazon Lex, I think, and then you would build everything through Amazon Connect. And while at first the intents seemed easy to manage, but if it didn't account for, hey, if you got a if you had to manually write down which intent you wanted to coordinate with the flow. And if you got a spelling wrong, right? If you manually said chatbot and then you put in the intent in Amazon Connect as chatbots, it wouldn't give you any feedback on that service to tell you that that intent doesn't exist. You were expected. There's a lot of human error issues. The other piece that was interesting for our business analysts was that they noted that you couldn't label the actual flows throughout all of Amazon Connect. And so that made it really difficult to manage the intents. You also couldn't set higher level in dialogue flow. If you start a new flow at the very top, at the start, if you say, hey, for anything that doesn't match, automatically default to this, you would actually have to set that individually for each piece on Amazon Connect. And that was all of that combined made it difficult, which is why I think the bot ended up performing worse, because after going back and retroactively seeing where did these intents not miss, why did this bot not match all the time, when we looked at the data and Amazon had done significantly worse, these human errors just weren't accounted for in the actual service, that it created intents to be mismatched all the time.
Yeah. So we've been working with you guys since I'd say like roughly late December. And what's that experience been like as far as working with bot copy on the front end side? And how have you seen, were you testing with Amazon a different front end? And did you see any higher conversion rates using the other two?
Yeah, so we love working with bot copy. That has been awesome. One of the main reasons, another big reason, was that our to launch the UI for Amazon, you had to use their open SDK, which had its own problems. And so I think back to testing with bot copy versus Amazon during this, again, prototyping phase, it was really interesting to see how you could scale with bot copy in Google really quickly. In the sense that we said, okay, our first test was to probably 1 or 2% of players, and keep in mind that we run like I think our English support site has like 2 million people run through it every month. So we can't do crazy exposure without being confident in the product. But with bot copy in Google, when we had done the first prototype, and we go through like usually a series of 3 tests, we say the first test is just to make sure nothing's completely broken. We went back and we fixed everything with Amazon that we saw, like with all the human errors. And we said, okay, we're going to go and do a second test and get into a larger testing suite. So we said, okay, we're going to, instead of doing only on like 5 or 6 pages, we opened it up to something like 5% of all of our players. And immediately Amazon actually also broke, which was weird. We couldn't figure out why they actually, in our test, you saw the data come back to say Google had like something like 30,000 accomplished sessions, and Amazon had 10,000 accomplished sessions, and that these sessions weren't starting. Turns out Amazon had a natural limit on their backend that they would have to go and adjust that didn't allow for more than 100 concurrent sessions at the same time. And we wouldn't have run into this limit had we not done like at least another set of tests just to make sure that we were testing for scale and we're testing for the future of what we want to build. So working with Bot Copy, we were able to say, great, like one, you had helped us with a ton of the authentication services and making sure that we could throw it up on our website rather quickly, because we had started the project, and within 3 months working with this team, helping us get this onto our testing suite is really all you want to see, right? Do you want to know that this project is worth investing in? And with Google, with Amazon, we had to build the UI, and it was really janky, and the 100 concurrent sessions problem, they weren't actually able to fix in the whole length of the test. It took a lot of back and forth, and we need to get like some sort of higher level approval. So at the end of the day, while most of the engineers had originally started with, Amazon's going to fit our needs, the user experience, the higher level testing allowed us to actually test for scale and test for ease of implementation that ultimately convinced them to side with Google. And while I think that maybe we could have done that through just business analyst or through other pieces, it's when you hear the player saying, this does not work, make it work, and you hear Google being like, okay, I recognize it. It's not perfect, but I can get through it. That's when you know that you have legitimate evidence to move forward in your decision to say like, okay, we're going to invest in this space. And now that we are in that, we're actually running a series of multiple tests for A/B testing for now account-based questions with Bot Copy through authenticating the player, giving them their player data, recognizing all the different ways that they ask for how they want GDPR data or whatnot, and then being able to share that. And we're in the middle of doing A/B testing for now actual true deflection on tickets.
And did you find, so you guys use some of our more advanced features, and your team has just been incredible to work with as well. You guys kind of push the envelope on what's possible. Passing the JWT token to authenticate your users when they log into your portal, things like that. Are you finding, and it's just every company we've seen has a different like chat roadmap, but you guys seem to like test the waters, do a series of tests, prove its value, and then kind of add on and find new, whether it's a department or areas to deploy chat into. Are you finding more and more just from direct feedback from the players coming in, or is like a bunch of light bulb moments going off on other kind of corporate bottlenecks that you can solve?
Yeah, so we worked with our internal machine learning team or like their data analyst team, and we don't try to find, like we have, as I said, we have millions of tickets, right? Our whole base of our previous service was all based off of tickets. So we don't really kind of do a thing where we say, oh, well, I have a gut feeling. We actually said, what is our biggest opportunity for making an impact on deflection? What are the tickets that are most likely going to connect a player with their data that we could automate from an agent? Because our metric against, I think, most deflection is usually live chat and how do I deflect live chat, but we're held to a bit of a, again, more higher standard with we have to deflect tickets. So in that, we took a look at all of our biggest categories, game data. We took a look at account-based data. We basically take a proxy of each of the teams and services that we connect with and say, what are the biggest gaps of what a player can actually get help with from an agent? And what is that impact on our tickets? And we found that account-related problems still account for about 40% of our tickets. And we worked with the data team to run a structured model to go and actually identify using, I think, like sentence vectors, so that we understood that there is roughly 17 clusters of different types of tickets a player will submit that's about account recovery. So the prevailing theory is that you have, a whole cluster. I think we analyzed 100,000 tickets, right? And of 100,000, what are the biggest categories of that 100,000 that we can actually have an answer for that they're asking about? And through that, they're actually asking two main things. It's like, I lost access to my email. Why am I banned? All of these nuanced bits that you can easily respond with, okay, well, here's all of this is how you go and get access to your email again. This is the account recovery form. Account recovery accounts for 40% of a lot of our volume that agents handle, which is pretty much like 23 basic questions that you could probably ask and answer. So we took those 17 clusters and we said, if a good bot were to solve this problem, we have to answer these 17 questions. And these 17 questions, we were able to then design different flows using whatever data that we have that an agent normally has, because we're using the same backend system, and design flows to solve those problems. And then we'll release that on all of the account-based question pages that we have on our website to do our A/B testing. So our goal is to never say like, oh, we have a feeling. Our goal is to say, where is our biggest opportunity from all of the things that we get asked about today? Because we have millions of tickets. Yeah. What are they asking about in those? Do we have good answers for them? And can we build a bot in a relatively quick amount of time that connects all of the data that we have on our back end to expose that to the player on the front end so they never have to submit a ticket? And so far, as of the last week, we were able to say that there is like a 14% deflection rate against tickets, or additional deflection rate against tickets, which is amazing to see, because now you have definitive answers of like, here's my flow for how people normally submit tickets. Here is my flow for when they interact with a bot. And we actually are able to pull out every single bot interaction that submitted a ticket to then go and target and reconstruct those flows to make sure that they stop submitting tickets. Like, our goal is to like, we can solve your problem, stop submitting tickets.
Yeah, if the chatbot can do it. Well, that's so interesting. So from a cost perspective for the company, obviously, if you're able to handle less tickets, you're saving operational costs, right? So it's a big win for the company. But then also on the other side, on the customer side, is the experience like, have you collected any feedback from them? Because I would imagine if you can handle some of these things in real time through a chatbot, instead of being able to submit a ticket and wait up to 48 hours to get the account situation resolved, that's a good situation. You know, no one likes to wait on hold and listen to jazz music really anymore. And no one likes to wait like 48 hours to jump back into a game that they really want to finish. So
exactly.
Are you experiencing that? Because that's just like it's kind of a beautiful thing. If the company can save money and also support their customers better, then how cool. And that's the direction that we see, obviously, chatbots like being able to help out. But I'm curious, like, you guys are running it live, have, thousands of conversations kind of coming in. What's been the overall feedback on the customer side?
So we haven't yet done the metrics on churn. So I think what we would do in our data team, what we like to do is run the one day, 7 day, 28 day, and that's how we define churn. So if you played a game the day after, if you played a game a week later, if you played a game a month later, is kind of a standard metric for how we want to measure our engagement with our players. Yeah. And our goal definitely would be to run the analytics on, of all the players that interacted with us on an account-based problem, what likelihood or deflection and churn could we have committed to? So we're still actually waiting on those numbers, but I will say that if you do submit a ticket, right now the queues are they're always backed up, but now that we're heading into the summer, it's getting a little bit worse. So we're going to always hit a 24 to 48 hour rate of when you can actually get back to the ticket, and having that bot there to immediately answer the player's question with the exact same flow that an agent would take is pretty important. I would say though that maybe our team has a little bit of trouble with what we call player behavior issues. So if you're ever curious, our players have, if you've ever played a game, they can get angry, they can get a little bit testy, and we do ban them because we say, hey man, please not do that. Like, we have a code of conduct. We want you to be a good person. And they'll come in just raging, saying, I want access to the game right now. Like, I was banned for no good reason. And our bot actually has to now handle two different points of view, where there's I want you to get back to the game. And then there's people where actually you shouldn't be back in the game. You're in timeout right now. So We have to do run the numbers on some math there because it kind of bundles into account problems. You're blocked, so your account is blocked, and we want to make sure that you recognize. So sometimes we'll show them their chat logs and we'll say, "Do you acknowledge that this was a mean thing to say?" And they say, "Yes, I acknowledge that that was a mean thing to say, but can I have it back, please? And I promise that I will do better." Like, there's all these automations that we have on our support site to help them realize our code of conduct so that they are good people playing with other people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ran any of the sentiment analysis stuff with Dialogflow to see, like, check in on, like, maybe it's curse words or
We have
inappropriate content coming through?
our gamers are gamers. They will just curse you out no matter what.
Yeah.
Even when we help them, it's so funny, right? We'll even when we help them, be like, "How are you?" And for a while, our bot didn't recognize basics like, "How are you? How's
Yeah.
it going?" And so we worked with our writers to add in some flair. Like, we are like, "I am a simple automation. I have no feelings. My sole purpose is to serve you." Like, little things like that have actually improved sentiment and made people like pretty happy about our bot, even when they're still banned from playing the game.
Yeah. Wow. So you're doing everything that I love to see. What first out of the gates, you're working with us, which is always fun. You approached with very like hard goals and ROI for the chatbot to meet in order for it to go into production. And you just kind of touched on it there, and I'd like to kind of end on this piece. Your team, it's not just you. We got a lot of big companies come in, and their chat team is maybe 2 people, and they've got these grand goals and want to do all this development with the chatbot, but they're a little light on the team. Whereas you've got designers, you've got creative and data. Like, can you talk a little bit about the team that you've put in place to kind of run with this current project?
Yeah, so I think our team is definitely our core team, and then they are like the borrowed team,
Yeah.
the people that I lean on to say, "Can you please help me?" Luckily, Riot has a culture of being extremely helpful, which is awesome. So my core team, I'm the product manager of this team. I have one analyst, and then we have two. We have 2 to 3 engineers. I 2 that are fully dedicated on this project. There's a third engineer who have actually worked on putting a KBA account recovery service that we're working on right now. So if you're ever interested in learning about KBA services and how you identity match in I guess healthcare at this point is what we're looking at. I'm happy to talk through that.
Yeah.
So there's the team, and then we have one UX designer who's split between us and a few other projects. So our team at its core is 2 engineers, a business analyst, and roughly a UX designer, and I have a quality manager that comes in and asks a bunch of questions. Our borrowed team is our data science team, our insights team, and agents. So one of the biggest things that has helped us the most, and probably the way that we built half of these flows, was actually leaning on agents as the subject matter experts. What do you do every day? There's definitely the internal rule book. We have a very thorough internal rule book of what to do for every scenario. But like practice versus execution and what you plan for is not always the same. So we brought in 2 to 3, actually a group of 6 agents from around the world. So there's some that are in Southeast Asia, there's some that are in Europe, and some that are in North America. And I call them like my council. And we build flows together because we have to make sure that they're globally compliant if we're going to propose them. So there's that team that comes together to say, "I have this problem," and I throw it into my Slack. And then somebody, like, invariably overnight, somebody will go and comment, and then somebody will pick up and say, "I'll go and build the flow for this." And then we take that flow and we connect it with our service and we build the bot.
I'm not sure if this is a question that's coming into us or not. But as far as your team goes, another interesting thing about Riot is your international presence and probably the eventual need for like multiple languages. Are you just supporting kind of English out of the gates? What's the kind of roadmap? I'm sure there's a lot of other bigger companies that have the same might be experiencing the same issues or figuring out how to expand with multiple languages as far as their customer base goes?
Yeah, so luckily, the Google team has been amazing. So shout out to Drew if you're out there in the world. So the Google team, we gave them our list of, this was actually one of the biggest limiting factors for what bot we could pick, right? We could
Mhm.
not pick a bot that could not support 22 languages and growing.
Yeah.
Anywhere from Arabic, Chinese, simplified Chinese, all the Southeast Asian languages, right? If you don't know, Wild Rift just launched in Southeast Asia, and it is a stifling amount of players, like 9 million players in the first few months, and you have to support all of those languages. So Google was one of the, because it supported so many languages, was
Mm.
one of the reasons why we had to go with that solution.
Right.
So what we'll be doing is we can actually say everything out the gate is in English. That's
Mhm.
fine. We want to prove that the bot works, right? If you can prove it works in one language, you can invariably prove that it works for all other languages, because we'll actually connect all of these intents and the sentences and the responses to what we have, what we call Loc CMS, which is our localization team. So we actually have an internal service that will say,
Mm.
great, using Google's API, we're going to download and throw it into all of our localization teams, where around the world, there's a whole team that will localize every word that you ever give them to the Riot appropriate phrasing. And they'll add the Riot appropriate flair as well. So think of them as translators and kind of like cool content
Oh, how
writers.
cool.
And so then what will happen is that we'll take Google Dialogflow, expose it to all of the languages, keep the same flows consistent across all languages, and then put the correct translations into all of those flows, and then be able to localize the bot across all of the languages that we will support.
Wow. So bot copy supports language localization by recognizing what's set to a user's browser settings.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were set in Spanish, then the chat window would automatically render in Spanish and try to pull the Dialogflow Spanish version.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also ways for a user to select and change their language. Do you think, by design, which approach do you think you guys would take? Like giving it in Spanish and then saying having some kind of escape key, or like change the language settings, or would you like to just to render off of their computer setting?
So we mostly will probably render it with the page settings. So we have, because all of our support pages are also translated into
Mm.
22 languages, we'll
Mhm.
probably correlate it to the page setting in the browser that they're on.
Yeah.
And if they want to change their language, I bet that at some point we're going to ask you to read data off of their browser, so that we can go and give them the option. Hey, we notice that your page is in Spanish, but your browser is in English because you, I don't know. And then we'll probably give them that option up at front. But usually our players are pretty savvy. They just know how to manipulate things and game the system. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that they'll figure out languages. We'll just do our best to make it easy for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, do you hide any Easter eggs in your chat for fun?
We do. There is a few Easter eggs in there, mostly because like one of the pieces that we're most concerned about is, I guess, learning from when we tested with Amazon. And we did not know for a full day that the service was having a concurrent session issue. So we have a synthetic that runs all the time to make sure that the
Mm.
chatbot is up and that it's continuing working. So that at any point, if it stops being up for more than 5 minutes or we're getting errors, we'll actually be alerted. And I highly recommend that to people trying to launch huge projects, that you always have like, where's your alerting system? What is your quality plan? How
Mm.
will you make sure that it's still up? And in order to do that, we have a bot that runs a lot every day doing secret, like a secret chat that you can go and figure out. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You would just kind of have to know the really random intent that we set it to in order to initiate that. Because what it does, it says, hey, here's a chat. Hey, log in. The synthetic will log in and just make sure that everything is working.
Mm.
But we have little Easter eggs like that. We have Easter eggs, if you, I think, I'm not going to tell you. If you want to go and play around with it, by all means, you can go and like find it. Right now, it's pretty hidden on all of our support pages because we're still testing out the account version, or like getting scaling to all of the players. But yeah, Easter eggs are really fun.
They are fun. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Is there any kind of last piece of advice you have for anybody kind of just getting started in their chat journey or just in general about chat?
I think make sure that you know what you're getting into, right? There's in that it's relevant for your company. Again, we had to have a very data-driven approach to prove deflection from a very early stage in order to prove to our regional stakeholders that this was an investment worth taking on and exposing to their players, right? You don't want a thing that makes the player experience bad. You want the player, for us, the player experience is everything.
Mm,
So if we couldn't prove that from out the gate, if we couldn't prove that chatbots help players and that it is a good experience, we were never going to get the buy-in from the rest of our team to go and invest in this strategy. But now that we do, obviously we have our council of agents that are here to help. We're right now also investing in Omni Channel. So think about your broad experience with your customer. Omni Channel is how we're going to connect our dialogue flow to multiple channels, including Facebook and WhatsApp, and across multiple different ways that we interact with players, because we're now going to connect agents in that live chat environment and really create seamless handoff of that whole player experience. So
mm,
I'd say that the chatbot is one component of what that experience should be, and it should fit in with your broad strategy of how you want your players or your customers to feel about your service. And if you don't have that broad strategy already in line, then the chatbot can only do so much, right? Whatever you're not metricizing there, you won't be able to know what to improve on. So for us, it was deflection and the whole experience. And is it flexible for languages? And can I put this into another service when I go and connect a bunch of agents? And how do I do routing? And how do I make sure that we're connecting with the player in a meaningful way and that we're translating things correctly, because a Garen can't be translated by Google Translate.
mm.
So you have to have the full picture and know where your chatbot fits in, rather than saying, I just want a chatbot. Like, you don't just
Yeah,
want a chatbot.
yeah. You'd be surprised how many people just say they want a chatbot without as many goals for the chatbot to accomplish out of the gates. So I love your approach. It's been awesome working with you guys. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks,
And
Dustin.
I think that's a wrap.